Welcome to the Love Now Movement interview series, where we talk with movers and shakers from around the world about spirituality and consciousness, about our human origins and ancient history, about the star people and multiple realities, about cutting-edge science and culture, about hidden agendas and unveiling the truth. We talk with people about what is really going on, what has gone on, and what we can do together collaboratively to allow all beings to be free of suffering and experience true liberation, to experience Earth thriving in the frequency of unconditional love. Come and explore with us our rapidly expanding world as we interview agents of change. Thanks so much for listening, and love now.
Welcome everyone to our latest Love Now Movement interview, and let me first say I am so grateful and feel so honoured that I'm actually getting a chance to speak with you, Steve. Your work is obviously earth-shattering, and I find your approach and Evan's approach so respectful, so thank you. So folks, if you have not heard of Stephen and Evan Strong, our guests today, or if you have not seen them recently this week on Ancient Aliens in America, or if you haven't even heard yet about the Egyptian hieroglyphs in Australia, well, dear friends, I can recommend that today you need to put on your seatbelts and get ready to erase much of the history you've learned in school. And let me say, I think it's really great that your name is Strong. That is so meaningful. So Stephen and his son Evan Strong are researchers, authors, progressive archaeohistorians, and speakers who have written 6 books. And these books practically rewrite not only the history of Australia, but of the whole world and of our origins, the origins of mankind. And their theory, which postulates that humankind is out of Australia and not out of Africa, is not only based on science, of course, but is in total consultation with elders of Australia. They're based in New South Wales on the central east coast of the country near Byron Bay, and they have spent many years with the Bundjalung Language Confederation and the Gimilaroi people of northern New South Wales. And I understand that Stephen actually speaks one of these languages, of the Bundjalung Language Confederation. There are a number of really fabulous YouTube folks that provide extensive wisdom from these researchers, so we will let the audience refer to these for the background and use our conversation today as a jumping point to get into some of the latest developments, including perhaps the latest update on the stone horse figure, and also to explore some of the more spiritual, metaphysical aspects of these findings as regards our star origins. So their 6 books can be found on their website, forgottenorigin.com. Fabulous, really extensive website. The books are Constructing a New World Map, Mary Magdalene's Dreaming, Forgotten Origin, Ancient Aliens in Australia, which is co-written with Guy Dennis and Fenton, Shunned, and their last book, Between a Rock and a Hard Place. So we've all heard that humans apparently evolved out of Africa. Bzz, wrong. And you might have seen the Love Now movement video with Michael Tellinger. We've got 3 up there now where he refers to the Anunnaki origins of mankind. And many of you are probably aware with the translations of Zachariah Stitchin of the Sumerian tablets, where he refers to these godlike beings, the Anunnaki, creating humankind. And then, of course, you've all heard of Professor Alan Wilson, who claimed that humans evolved from Africa. Well, he's, of course, recanted that theory now, and he believes that a small group of Homo erectus arrived in Australia 400,000 years ago, and he surmises that they evolved into Homo sapiens and then spread from Australia well before the Africans. So these are a couple of theories out there. The Australian original people say that they arrived from the Pleiades, as do many Indigenous people from around the world say that they came from the Pleiades. And the Australian original people say that we, the rest of humanity, are descendants of them, of these people, so that we all come from originally from Australia. So I must say that growing up in Australia, I certainly felt that as a child. The land feels older than anything I know. And the little we did learn about the Indigenous people going to school kind of explained to me that they were the beginning and that they were deeply connected to the stars. And Australian original elders explain that Uluru, that great big red rock in the middle of Central Australia, which is a big tourism symbol, actually was brought there from the Pleiades to terraform the planet and is considered the navel of the Earth by the original people. It's huge. It's 2 miles long. It's about 11 feet high. But interestingly, it extends into the Earth for 3 miles, and it's shaped like a spearhead. So the Strongs out of Australia claim, supported by scientific evidence provided by genes and mitochondrial DNA, blood, and supported by many experts, that Australian original people set sail from Australia, not to Australia, 50,000 years ago, and that they then went and settled in America 40,000 years ago and visited many other places, including Egypt, Japan, Africa, and India. So this is why you need to put your seatbelts on first, folks, because they were the first Homo sapiens who evolved even before the sapiens of Africa and who gave the world language, art, religion, marine technology, culture, axes, cooperative living, and even surgery. And the Strongs also claim that some of the native animals, if not all of them, in Australia come from the Star people. They talk about the dingoes having no relationship to any other dog or wolf or coyote. And apparently the songbirds also originated from Australia. So in the videos on YouTube, you'll see there evidence of the Egyptians in Australia, and they explain that the Egyptians actually came to Australia to meet their original people and to learn from them and take that knowledge back to Egypt. And we can see a lot of this cross-pollination. And there are hieroglyphs in Australia made by Egyptians that are dating back some 4,600 years to the Proto-Egyptian period. Now, I certainly didn't learn that at school. There are also videos where they explain very, very extensively about the original people that are being found in other countries, such as in India. And, of course, where we're going today is to talk especially about the hieroglyphs in this one location in Kariong, and beneath them there are what Stephen calls extraterrestrial glyphs that are more ancient and seem to describe the creation of human beings. And there's also a huge, some 2 meters large glyph as well of what is considered the largest UFO glyph in the world, which is perhaps Mothership. So it is absolutely amazing information. It is backed up not only by the information from the elders, but by science. So we're talking about human beings coming from the Pleiades, being created, and then those people then coming out of Australia. So again, this is about our star origins. So Stephen has spoken about this alien involvement, and that is where I would like to jump off in our conversation today. And again, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so honoured to be talking with someone who is recreating the history of the Earth in front of us. Thank you so much.
Well,
I'm so glad.
Thanks for the intro, because I basically feel like I can go to bed now. It's all been done, but we'll hang in and fill in the rest of the time anyway. But yeah, thanks a lot for that.
There are
let's
so
start
many
with
questions.
The Pleiades then.
So you talk about the alien involvement as a mixed bag, and that you say alien genes will save us, but alien actions have nearly destroyed us in this double-edged sword. And you speak about Earth being a high-octane spiritual planet, which I love that description, and that it does not sit well with technology, that we've destroyed ourselves already many times. So,
well, that's the history of Australia. That's basically the beauty of what we've found here. I mean, the important part of the story is what you've just said. You see, the archaeology we're finding in Australia is phenomenal. That's why all these people are coming down at the moment. And the trick is, it's obvious that there was something really sophisticated. So we're very lucky in Australia, unlike anywhere else in the world. According to every history book, it was sealed off from the rest of the world until Cook and the British came and stole it. So what we have is a time capsule. And this is very important. And the best part is because nobody came in, according to all the scientists, it's been sealed off. So what we find here is there is something going on in this country that is a lot different to what we expect. There was definitely ancient civilization and technology of a level we are only just reaching today. And what we found is there was a time in the past, way back, where the original people said that this doesn't work. And that's why they became the only nation, the only continent in the world where they all lived the same lifestyle from that point until Cook. Naked hunter-gatherers. They decided to throw away, very much like the Indian sadhus, that just walk the countryside and basically try and get in contact with their purpose and the creators. So that's what we have in this country. A time when we walk down this style. And as I said, yes, many times, the Pleiadian genes were what saved us, but the Pleiadian and all the other groups that came, let's be honest, it wasn't just one group here. They brought technology here. And every time, we heard the story of Atlantis. It happened in Australia too. It happened all over the place more than once. It rises, and then nature takes it over. And we're at that stage again. So yes, it's an ongoing story. And I think it's a history, the original history is always circular. And that's what this is.
So what actually do we deem technology then when we say that the original people walked away from technology? What exactly is technology?
Well, let me give you some exact examples of rocks we've seen and artifacts and give you an idea of the technology involved. It's a very simple equation. If you see something that doesn't make sense, you look at it and say, how did that happen? Now, we have a collection now, what they call the Star Rocks collection by Uncle Marbuck. I didn't know it was called that until he told me that. And they've been looking for these rocks for 50 years. Now, within those rocks, if we look at, say, the first rock, which has been called Ross's Rock 1. Now, that rock is at least 10,000 years old. But what we know for an absolute fact is that there's a chert coat, a thin chert coat that was melted on top of it and stuck on. Now, for that to occur, you need 1,700 degrees Celsius to melt the chert so it can stick on top of another rock. And then what they did is they cut on top of the rock, and they cut all these angles and lines. Now, what's interesting is if you look a bit closer at this rock, you will find there are two holes there. And they were infilled with another material, and that's been stayed there. It stayed there for the last 10,000 years. Tell me a glue today that you can stick rock on rock and it'll stay together for 10,000 years and not one grain will fall out because it's still perfectly smooth on top. I did not know it was an infill, but a professor of geology was holding this. He said, this is the most amazing rock I've ever seen in my life. Look at these infills. I said, what are they? And he told us. Then you look at another part of the rock and you'll find them stamped down 0.5 centimetre and haven't broken the surface, but everywhere else it's cut on top. Now here's the interesting part. Every line that we see in all our rocks wasn't chiselled, it was cut. A knife was cutting through rock. Now, have you got a knife today that can cut through rock that I can throw on the ground on concrete and it won't leave a mark? The answer is no. And my geologist friend told me, he said, see this rock here? He said, you could go to the local hardware store and buy any chisel you want and smash it against this rock and you won't mark it. And he said, you could throw it on a piece of concrete and it wouldn't get marked. And I said, well, John, whatever the person's name, I said, I'm never going to throw it on concrete. Within a week, I was working on this rock and I dropped it out of my lap and it fell on concrete. And I sat there for about a minute thinking, oh my God, what have I done? Then I picked it up. There's not a mark on it. Now, that's a technology that is quite recent, but we see it everywhere. Now, we've got another rock there, number 5, which is a star map. And what it's like, what's happened there is they've melted it twice. It's been completely layered on flat on every side. It's been a cut rock, a shaped rock, and they've put all the star maps, Orion, Aurora Borealis, the Southern Cross, and of course the Pleiades on the 4 sides. Now, what's happened is on one side they've melted it a second time where you put your thumb, and that rock has dribbled down the side, and it looks like it would when candle wax dries again. which means it was heated a first time and then locally heated a second time for the thumb grip. Now we're starting to talk about, you can't do this by throwing a rock on the campfire. This is really sophisticated technology. Now I can go to another site, which we call Trina's site, and we've got it up, pictures of it, where we've got a 10-ton rock that was cut and placed on a platform. Absolutely, and it's granite. What do you cut a 10-ton granite rock with? And there, in this place, is another section where there are 40 rocks stacked on top of each other and they're all way over a ton. Now, that's not supposed to happen in Australia. How do you cut granite rocks that weigh a ton and stack them perfectly so you can't put a leaf through them? These rock formations we've seen are like South America.
Right, so they're similar to the ones found in South America, in Bolivia and...
Yeah, well, Graham Hancock was on Gimpy Pyramid and said this is exactly the same as the rocks at Machu Picchu. When we're looking at the pyramid there is no difference. You've got to remember the original people were in South America. Genetically, that's been proven. They just looked at. Yeah, you know that. They looked at a tribal group, the most remote tribal group there is in the world, basically, in the Amazon, and found their closest original link was the original people in Papua New Guinea. They were the only genetic link in the world. So we know they were there. So if you see those rocks in South America, I've seen them in Australia. I saw a set of rocks like that within 2 k's of where the glyphs are. And we call that Klaus Tunas, because he actually gave us the coordinates to find this cave. And there are 1-ton rocks where you could not put a blade of grass through them. It's exactly the same as South America. Or should I say, South America is exactly the same as Australia.
Right. So, Stephen, these are the silcons, these stones. Are they also called message stones as well?
The silcons I have at the moment, no, they're not message stones. No, they're different types. There are Taringa stones, which are message stones. The silcon stones are actually cylinder cones.
Okay. So the stones you're talking about, which has the star map, and you say that they have a place for your hand, for your thumb, these are basically what you're calling technological handheld devices. Have the elders spoken to you about their uses?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, look, I wouldn't touch a silcon. I knew about them, and we had buyers. We've got people who actually buy these rocks on the open market when they've been sold to America and other places. We lose them all, and these people have been buying these rocks. Now, they were holding about 8 of these, and I said I wouldn't touch them. I knew what they were. Right. I said, I'm not going to touch power rocks until I have an elder that tells me what they are and how I should hold them. Where's the point owning or holding something? We don't own them, by the way. We're giving them back somewhere. We've got a special place they're all going back to. It's an island, but that's down the line. But these rocks, while we're looking after them, I would not touch something unless I was familiar with it and I was given that introduction by an elder. When Uncle Marduk told me how to hold them, how they work, and what their function is, then we decided, yes, now you can send them to us, which we've been looking after since. And they are amazing.
And are you able to share that with us? What is their function?
It's a work in motion. Look, there's a couple of articles. I'm putting up an article. I've put up 2 articles about silcons. I'm putting up another one in about a couple of days. It's going up very soon. And I've got another one I'm writing with now, and I've got a very willful one I'm dealing with at the moment. Of all the silcons I've had, this is the only one, and I'm going to use these words, and I put it in the article too. I've never said this before. It's the only one that scares me. I've had a problem with it. People thought it was an axe. It's got a blade like an axe. It goes for 20 centimetres across the front of it, but it's never been cut in its life, and it's rock, and it weighs over 5 kilos. You need 2 hands to lift the damn thing up. It would be the heaviest rock in the world ever. It's a silcon. It's a power rock. And what I do with these rocks, when I get the new ones that come in, then I know that have come from original place and sacred. I spend a couple of days holding them before I just start to sort of writing things down. I did that with this rock, and as usual, sometimes you get a reaction. You get an idea what it's about, because we've had hundreds to compare against, so we've got a feel for what's going on. And for 2 days, this was going amazingly. And then on the 3rd day, it just decided it didn't want me near it anymore, and it basically froze one of my fingers in mid-beat. And the whole tip of it just froze for 20 minutes. I put it in hot water. I put it in heat. It would not give up. And I thought to myself, oh, my God, I'm going to have a heart attack here because my circulation is gone completely. It was like frostbite. The bone was frozen to the bone. And anyway, it went away. And then I came back the next day and held the rock again. And this time, it was my other hand and my little finger. And it froze again. And I did all the things from before. And then it dawned on me, was this rock doing this? And I actually basically said to the rock, I'll pick you up to move you and show people, but I won't examine you anymore. Will that be enough? And I put the rock down. Within 5 seconds, my finger was perfect. And 2 days later, we had the coldest day we've ever had here. And I sat outside all day doing my work in a T-shirt to see if my fingers would freeze now. No, I'm fine. Nothing's happened since. This rock didn't want me to touch it anymore, so it just froze my fingers off. And it's freezing cold to touch anyway. I'm quite scared of it, but I'll keep working at it. I'm not going to give up just because the rock's going to freeze my fingers off. I'll work with it. But I'm going to deal with that very carefully. These are power rocks that actually do have a force. We've been measuring them, actually. We've had different machines we put on them. I hate to quote the Monty Python line where they had a hospital with machines that went bip and needles that moved around, but we've had them. We've had dowsing people. We had the Vice President of Dowsing Association from Great Britain that was standing 30 metres away from these rocks and on rain in the silicons, and it was still moving in one spot. When the power comes out of a silicon rock, it doesn't go like a ripple. Uncle Marbach told me what it does is like it wraps around your little finger and a ray shoots out in one spot. So I can aim these silicons at a spot, and the dowsing rods, they can walk, and then when they get to that spot alone, it'll just spin madly and then go past the one again. You can do this anyway. These are the rocks. If you know the songs that go with these rocks, which I do not know, that pick up those 10-ton rocks we talk about. You know, that castle they spoke about where the guy holds the ice cream cone rocks. Well, these are ice cream cones. They're silicons, and they're exactly the same things. That's their job.
So these
All I know is they've got a lot of power.
So these are the rocks that create the anti-gravitational, some sort of...
Yeah, that's what they are.
So
That's what the elders tell me. Yep, that's what I'm passing on. By the way, my job here is not to question the elders, but pass it on. You see in our first 3 books, we wrote them with University Press of America, and we never mentioned aliens. We didn't want to do this. We got forced into it by every elder saying, you have to tell the full story. You're only telling part of it. Tell them where we come from. We didn't write that. You can check our first 3 books. Well, that was written for University Press of America. When we put our manuscript in and mentioned it on our 5th book, they said, we're not touching this. And that's when we started looking elsewhere. We were forced into this. This is not a crusade. We're just telling a story about the original people and where they come from. And they insist that we tell them the whole story, so we do. Yeah, they're the rocks that lift things up. And
for example, the one with the star mat, that would not necessarily be used for lifting things up, but could it be like...
No, but you've still got to hold them. All of these rocks have ways of being gripped. Every rock is gripped in a different way, and everyone has a different power. There are meditation rocks, where one elder told me, this rock here, number 3, he said, when I close my fingers, I cannot speak. And when he did, we all shut up. And then we put his fingers open and we could talk again. He said, when this rock is closed, no one speaks. We keep quiet. This is a meditation rock. So there are different rocks that have different powers. Some are just records. No power at all. Others do have a power. You see, ladies and gentlemen, remember this. Every one of these rocks I'm talking about is coated in silicon. Silicon. Now, what do we store our energy on today in our computers? Silicon chips. What did they do? They stored their information on silicon chips. So what we have on this silicon, which is only very thin, honestly, it's so thin, and there's always a lighter color-based rock on all of these rocks. Always 2 rocks, one on top of the other. It's a given. It was melted on. But the question is, okay, I've got all the marks there. Like I can give you an example. With Ross's Rock 1, the marks on those rocks are the first language. Now, that's a pretty brave statement to make, but we can prove this. Because you know what? You obviously know the Bosnian pyramid and Dr. Smear and the work they're doing.
Yes,
they contacted us. They found a rock underneath the pyramid in a tunnel, and it had all the same lines that we had in Australia.
Right, with
they said,
the 15 coordinating, right.
Yes, we have 15 lines here with 15 angles on Ross's Rock 1. They have exactly the same angles, and that includes, ladies and gentlemen, one of those is 0.66, 13.66. We have it, and so do they. What are the chances that you would have 15 rocks, 15 angles on Bosnia? We have them all on Ross's Rock 1. And the same deal with the Calgary Rock in Canada. Of the 21 markings there, 19 are on the Australian rock. Now that's crossing the world there. There is a first language here too. There are so many different levels to what's going on there. But remember, they wrote it on rock. And why didn't they do it on paper or tree like we do, or disc? because they all rot. They left it on something that we could find. But the problem is, as my elders have said, these people came from a time when humans had more genes than we have today.
Humans had more genes.
What he means
And
by
what
that
has
is
happened?
we're using more of them, yes, than we do today.
Right.
We don't use many of them anymore, and we don't use our Pleiadian genes enough. That's what
And do you believe they've actually been actively shut down, or that we're kind of just like rotting away slowly here?
No, they're being charged up right now as we speak. The Earth resonance.
They're being charged up now, but before they're getting charged.
Being charged up.
But what happened that they actually became less?
No, look, what happened was, you should probably know, we've been with Michael on site together in Australia. I've taken him out there, and you know Michael's story about the Anunnaki. And look, there are other groups. In Australia, Pleiadians, right? In other areas, different groups took over. And in those groups, they also played with the genes like they did with the original people. There's no denying that. The genes were changed. But see here, the original people, the Pleiadians, wanted something to incarnate into, something that was greater than the gods that created both of us. They were looking for something between the two species, the human species and the Pleiadian species, that would be better than both. So these people, the genes that we have, the original people have, are meant for introspection, for independence and finding things. The genes that other humans have in other places were meant to comply and obey. Now, what the original people did is when they sailed out to the rest of the world, they spread the Pleiadian original gene, which is inside all of us. And we've done the science to prove that, as you mentioned before. We won't go down that path today, but we proved this with mitochondrial DNA, Y chromosome, the whole thing. That particular storage, that Pleiadian original gene, is what will save us. That's what I said before. That is our salvation, because that one says follow nobody, follow yourself. You see, original people, when they go on a spiritual sabbatical, they go on what's called walkabout. And they walk off on their own. Not to a church. They just go into the bush. And they spend their time there until the spirits find them and they talk to them. That is their spirituality. And that's the way they do things. Each person is a person of themselves. And if they do this themselves, they don't read books. They don't do that. They go to nature. That gene is within all of us. And right now, that gene is stirring. Yes, there have been other genes that dulled us down, and I do believe that there's been genes from other countries that have not helped us at all, because that sort of gene we see still at play today with a lot of humans who let that one take over, where we're more compliant and we follow and we become more fearful. And some genes feed on that.
Is that the Syrian gene that you see as being
it is. We know which. I don't want to, because look, let's get this straight. There are greys that are good. There are reptilians that are good, not many, but there are some, and there are Syrians that are good and bad, and there are Pleiadians that are bad. Let's not try and think that there's any species that's perfect, because that's not going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. We all have problems. But the Pleiadians were the only ones who worked out something about this planet that no one else worked out, and that's why they came to Australia. And you see, there's a story with this too, because I did ask my elder, one of the elders I really do revere, and there's about 4 or 5 I've talked to, some have passed on recently, and this one did. It was Uncle Marbach. He taught me about the Silkons. And I actually said to him, I said, Uncle Marbach, I don't get this. He said, why did they bother coming here? I said, look around the last 5,000 years, all you ever do is fight. Our history is warfare. Why would you bother? All these really enlightened species, why would you come down to a warring group of cranky monkeys? Where's the point? And I figured that, and I've thought this for quite some time. I've always had an issue about this. What have we got that they would want? And he gave me an answer, and it's probably the best answer I've ever heard. He said to me, think of the very first time that humans portrayed an alien working with them, and it's Dr. Spock. He said, I want you to think of all aliens as shades of Dr. Spock. They have rationale, they have logic, but they don't understand love. They don't have emotion. There are shades of that, but we are the greatest. We have the most love. We will do things for love, and they don't get it. And remember, Dr. Spock would always shake his head and say, I don't get these humans. I like them. And see, what you're looking at with the Pleiadians, they don't have that love and emotion, but they have a compassion and a sense of right or wrong. But they don't understand that. Now, what we have, they don't have. is we can make a Beethoven. We can make a Pink Floyd Muse. We can make Tchaikovsky. They can't do that. We can have Van Gogh. We can have Renoir. They can't do that. We can extend areas that they don't understand, and that is why they've come. That's why the Greys used to cut us up all the time. They're trying to find it inside, but they couldn't. There's something about humans that we can give to the rest of all of the cosmos, and we underplay it. And it comes back to what I said earlier. We need to be spiritual human beings, and we need to realize that this planet works on high spiritual octane. It doesn't want the technology. We keep thinking if we make flashy machines, we're going to get better. No, we're not. The original people worked this out so long ago. They worked out it doesn't work. And they're still waiting. They're giving that message again, and they're saying their time will come. But that is what Uncle Marbach told me. That's why they've come. Because we can teach them love, and they don't fully understand it. Because love is the most powerful force there is in the cosmos. And we are the only ones who possess it in its entirety. That is why we've been dulled down and things have been hidden from us, because we have the potential, and I'll quote from the Gospel, I think it's the Apocalypse of Adam in the Gnostic Gospels, where Adam said to Seth that Eve taught him, remember what I just said, Eve taught him, that we could be greater than the gods that created us. That is the clue, and that's what the Pleiadians brought us, but not the Syrians, not the Anunnaki, not the other groups. And you know what? There are Greys and reptilians who understand that too. It's spreading everywhere right now.
I agree with you about the spread for sure. I don't know if you're aware of this. I've been working actually as a Pleiadian channel or messenger for the last 20 years publicly, and have some books and a lot of information out there from the Pleiades. So I from my contact or from my experience, the Pleiadians actually, what I feel is love. So
yes,
that's something that I question about what you're saying is just that sense of love.
Yes.
But speaking for them or with them for so many years, I totally agree with you that the Pleiadian energy teaches us introspection and curiosity and
that's
find
stuff
the
they
divine.
teach us. But they've learnt this because they were smarter than the other aliens. They separated. What I said was they wanted to make something that incarnate into, and they've been doing this. It's not 50,000 years. This goes back a long, long time. They've learned it by now. That's the advantage they have over the others because they went with the original people. They didn't try and subjugate them like they did, the Syrians did and others. You've got this right. They understand this now. And they came looking for the hominids of all the different mobs. And remember, 100, 200,000 years ago, there was not 2 or 3 hominids. There were 25 to 30 of them. The Homo sapiens were one group. And ladies and gentlemen, here's a shock for you. We weren't the smartest. Did you know the Neanderthals have a skull capacity of 1,530 cc and ours is 1,300? So boys and girls, don't get excited by the fact we call themselves Homo sapien sapien. I think Doctor Who summed it up well when he said, I thought the poets, the Neanderthals, would get up rather than the cranky monkeys, but you never can tell. So we're not the smartest, but we were chosen. But yes, you're right. Of all the groups, of all the alien groups, they were the ones who were closest to love. But you know what? As close as they were, we taught them the next step. But they were coming from that angle. They didn't want to subjugate. They came here with their hand offered to shake hands, not to hit us or tell us what to do. So you're right about the Pleiadians. I see them as different to the other groups.
And have you actually seen them or had ET experience, so to speak?
Me personally, or possibly, but that's another story, and that's probably what I can say is the elders I'm working with often talk about the tall, the 3-meter blue people, and I have elders who say they have seen them. Yes, and I know a couple I trust implicitly, and I know there's a place where they still show themselves in the desert. I know they're still around. I know there's a place in the middle there. Yeah.
And the original people explained that they are human-looking, but they're blue-skinned and they're about 3 meters tall. That's the description.
They're taller. Yeah, we've got some of their tools and stuff. I found some stuff around here that belongs to them too. All that stuff, they're taller. Look, they speak about them. How can I say this? They call them their countrymen. I'm going to use words that original people have told me about them. I'm not going to use my words because that's not our job here. Our job is interlocutors, to pass on a story, not to embellish it. As I said, we never spoke about this until we were forced into it. But they call them their countrymen. They say, look, I have one elder who's passed on. I can't say their last name because we're not allowed to do that, Uncle Jerry. He would ring me up. He was really, everyone knows him. He's a very important man. He knows the old way. And he'd ring me up and give me a piece of information and hang up. But he would always hang up and tell me the same thing every time. And it was the same thing. And I knew when he said that, that means when he started this sentence, I knew we were finishing up. And he'd say, my grandmother told me that our people come from the Pleiades. They and us are the same. We're no different. And then he'd hang up. And I haven't met an elder that will not tell me that same story. You see, the Seven Sisters story is the only dreaming story that is in every mythology in all the 500 tribes in Australia. And the Seven Sisters are the seven stars of the Pleiades. And they're chased by, of course, Orion. Now, everybody knows that story, but in Australia, all dreaming stories are regional specific except the Seven Sisters. There's nowhere where you can't find that story. I've been in West Australia in the desert, and I went to a cave there, the most important cave they had. They were going to mine it and blow it up, and it was the middle sister of the dreaming, of the Pleiades, and the elder told me if they blow this up, our dreaming is dead. So that's their link.
Mm. Oh, boy, I am just getting so many incredible energetic vibrations right now talking to you. It's fabulous. In some of the symbols that you show, I think they're for Baragara, and you say that the embryo or the baby is a symbol of the Pleiades. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yeah. The Baragara site. Sorry.
So is that because that's our birthplace?
Yes, it is. Well, the story is, and I know it's up on Ancient Aliens at the moment, and that part they did particularly well, and that was Gabby Duncan, one of the elders that I actually recommended for them to work with. I didn't recommend the other one, but Gabby I did. And Gabby will tell you the story at Mount Yango. I know where it is, where Biami's spaceship used to land all the time. Thoth, you can call him Thoth if you want. We call him Biami. It's the same thing. He's the god of wisdom and knowledge. Always there. And then what would happen is when he lands at Baragara, outside Mount Yango, the first step that they make is at Baragara, the place you're talking about. And there, of course, they put the insignia of the Pleiades. And that's part of their calling card as they come in. And they will go backwards and forwards. And Mount Yango is an amazing place. You can stand 30 k's away, and it's like a tabletop on the top. They've blasted the whole top off. You could play tennis on it. It'd be the biggest tennis court in the world. It's just flattened. It's just bizarre. And like the elder said, yes, because they landed there so often. When you get no one can get on there. Even we can't get onto that side. They won't let anyone on the top. That's where it landed. Yeah.
So the story that you speak of with I believe Auntie Bev, that the Pleiadian mothership that crashed in Bambara.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you explained how was that the actual beginning when they crashed? Like the actual crashing to me. Like does a mothership actually crash, or was it interpreted as a crash?
No, not interpreted. It's very clear, and I've got more than one dreaming story. Uncle Reuben Kelly was the last initiated man in New South Wales that could cup the boys and give them ceremony. He told a story which means he still had a contact with the old way by doing that. That's why I'm saying that first. He told the story about the spaceship made of energy that turned to crystal and exploded. Arnie Bev spoke about the same thing, and by the way, he's the next tribe up. Arnie Bev's Darking Yong, next one up is Uncle Reuben's tribe, the Dungari. Now, what they both spoke about, and of course there was a painting there of this event, which the Department of Main Roads blew up while Arnie Bev was in hospital. And they waited until she was in hospital to blow it up. It's a very common story there of the big explosion that took place. We don't know, what the elders have told me, we don't know whether that explosion was by deceit from a group here, pipes of reptilians, which is a very common one I've heard. I don't know that for sure because I can't prove that. Or whether it was an accident. But what you've got at the Carry-On Glyph site is you've got 8 UFOs. Right? They're all the UFO sites. Everyone calls them UFO. Not me. That will always call that by the general public because it is a typical UFO sign. Now, 3 of those UFOs are plummeting and the legs are off. And then 4 are the right way. Now, Arnie Bev spoke about the Mothership crashing in the Bambara still waters, and the Bambara is 2 k's from where the glyphs are. And what we're saying is it's a story of taking place. So not even all the escape pods landed properly. So here's the difference. The Pleiadians, when they landed here, unlike the Syrians and all the others, they weren't fully prepared. They'd lost most of the stuff they brought. So it's a longer, gradual process where the original people in the Pleiadians are working with it. So because you think about it, from the count there may have been 3, maybe 4, 5 or 6 escape pods that did not get blown up. And that's your founding population of Pleiadians. It's not a lot, and they don't have much they've brought with them. They're basically castaways, aren't they? They've lost their ship. They've lost all the stuff that's in there. And I would suggest to you the escape pods didn't carry a lot of stuff that they were going to use for settlement. So the story here is so much different than the others. There's more cooperation here than the other mob. That's why there's a different story here that we need to spread.
And the elders speak about Uluru being a rock brought from the Pleiades that was used for terraforming.
Yeah, can I tell you exactly what Uncle Brendan said? Now, Brendan is the lawman in Victoria. Okay, and he told us a story, and he's put it up too. It's a well-known story, and it's a story of it for many elders before. Their story is that way back, God, we're going back way back here. The Pleiadians must have been around for donks before us, I can tell you. They aimed a spear. And you correctly described the fact with Uluru. It doesn't belong there. It's just in the middle of nowhere. It's just a flat desert and this massive thing. And it goes down 3 to 4 miles, like you said, and it's shaped like a spear. Brendan said the spear was aimed at the earth from there, and in it they laid algae and all DNA patterns and all sorts of stuff that seeded the whole of the earth. And the seeding process took place there. That's why Australia has the oldest geography and the first animal forms of any type, fish and tribalites, all that sort of crap. It all happened here because the seeding began here. And then that seeding started the process. It's a form of terraforming, but it's more bioforming, isn't it? And then further on, they come when they get to the stage where there's a hominid that's developed far enough, and they chose the original ones as the best. They said, okay, now we have something that is our equal, and from that we can create something greater. So that's the story the elders tell me. I pass that on again. I've met Brendan quite a few times. When it comes to culture, that man knows everything.
So their intention was to bioform a species that then they would later work with or inhabit, as you said, or...
Yeah, that's how they did it. They had a plan that goes way back. That is really going back a long time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Goes way back.
I mean,
but
this
that's
is very
what they
similar
tell me.
to what the channeled information is, yeah.
Is it?
And then along that process, as they were doing that bioforming and then looking after their babies, so to speak, and that's when the other cosmic races came along as well and began to interfere or manipulate or create as well.
Yeah, they did, and the problem is they came over here, and there's been enormous warfare here. I've been to a place here where the whole place was blown up. Massively. Heat that's just beyond, there's a column there that spread over about a kilometre and a half. It was all joined up at one stage. I've been to a place that's just like nothing else. It's a death place. There was obviously, the Hindu scriptures talk about the great battles that took place. Well, there was one in Australia, and the place where it carry on, the work we're doing in Pleiadian, there's 150 sites there we haven't got to yet. It was a massive city that was blown up. And I think, to an extent, I'm only guessing here, this is my opinion, not what the elders said. I think that after this took place, and this fight did take place because a lot of things were blown up here, the original people said, no, this is not working for us. We're not having this again. I think they were pushed into an extent because of what happened then. But we do have really graphic evidence here, no doubt, that something major, I'm talking about big explosion, that's not the mothership, further down the line something happened here. And the whole place got
where
smashed.
the civilization was destroyed.
Yeah. And the tidal waves I've seen 2 of them. I've been to a place where we've found periwinkles that are still in little chasms, 110 metres above the sea level of today, which means it had to have got there in the last 10,000 years. There've been a lot of them. The tidal waves are fine. That's part of the deal. But this was not a tidal wave, this one. This was bad. This is real bad. And it's in all their stories too, by the way. In all their dreaming stories, they talk about this time.
And does it show any sort of sign of nuclear warfare to you?
Can't tell. Oh, look, I can tell you this. Okay, the site I went to. This is true. I'm not making this up because one of the people was here bleeding when this happened. I took 3 women onto that site the first time because I always take women onto site. I will not go onto a site without a woman. That's crazy. It's just not going to work. You're not going to see
Definitely a good idea,
in women's eyes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you won't disagree with that. But anyway, we took 3 on site and we spent a lot of time measuring things. We were sitting inside gutters, stone gutters where the lips were 68 mils on both sides, and you could sit inside them. They were so damn big. And we're having a great time recording all this stuff. And then what I noticed were 3 things. Number 1, no bird sign. First time I've been to a site with no birds. Number 2, no insects in the ground. Number 3, no life whatsoever. It felt miserable. Now, that was just my feeling about the place. And I've been to a lot of sites by now, and I get a feel for what it's like. I thought, this place is no good. But what's interesting is that the week after, 2 of the women ended up in hospital with pleurisy, and the last one, Lisa Harrison, was up at our place coughing blood in her tissue all the time, coughing blood constantly, all night long, coughing and coughing and coughing. All 3 women were coughing blood. Now, tell me there isn't something wrong with that site, because I've talked to the original people after and said, what's with this site? He said, we don't go near there, it's death. It's death. That's all they know it as a death site. So, yeah, it's still there. If you took a Geiger counter there, we never thought at the time, because I'm not going back there. The place is miserable. It is so scary to go. It's full of death. If you can't find an insect and you don't have a bird that greets you, if you never have a bird that greets you, you've got a problem because the spirits aren't there. Yeah. So that site I wouldn't go back to, but it's horrific. And that is a site that was blown to pieces.
So the elders are telling you that this year, that 2016, is a very important year for getting information out. And from what I understand, they give you information and ask you to make it public, to get it out there. And they would like to avoid something like this happening again, some similar major catastrophe. Right. So what is the sense of this year?
Well, the sense of this year is, look, I'll say this, don't look to the sky for something, because that's not where it's going to come from. Original people don't do it. We do it with within. It's ourselves doing it. What the sense is this year particularly, the best way I can put this is I know exactly what's going to happen, but I can't really talk the whole thing through, okay, because I'm not really allowed to yet. But what's going to take place is there are elders, not just in Australia, in the whole world, that have implements. Now, some of the implements are the stone rocks that we've got, some are sticks. And when these sticks and rocks are all placed in the ground, there'll be a change. And I'm going to give you one example. I've given it before, so it's okay to get it. Give it again, and I've given it more than once, and the people who told me about this, I trust implicitly. I'm not going to say who the elder is. There was an elder that went up to a place called Darwin, which is the capital city of Northern Territory in Australia, and he had a stick with him. I held the stick once when I was given ceremony. I held it for an hour. Before they decided the stick accepted me, then I was given a ceremony. If the stick didn't accept me, it wouldn't have happened. Anyway, this elder decided, it was a doctor, he said, I'm going to just test the waters. And what he did was he put the stick in the ground. It was on a park in Darwin. Now, the story I was told is the guy alongside this guy said, yeah, it happened to me too. Everyone fell on the ground and fell asleep for 5 hours. And there were about 100 people. Ambulances came, picked them up, took them to the hospital, and they were laid down 5 hours later. Everyone just woke up and said, what am I doing here? And this was quite a mystery for a couple of days. These guys both told me the story, and I trust them implicitly, and he said, this is what they said. They said, we're just testing one of them. And what I'm getting from this is as follows, that somewhere down the line, there's always been the story of Armageddon and all sorts of things. Well, somewhere down the line, my understanding is that if all the elders put all their sticks and the rocks, and we know some of these rocks, we've got a couple ourselves, and we're giving them to someone who's going to look after them and do that at the right time, if they do them everywhere. And some people go to their pyramids because there's different things in different places that are power sources. And if they're all done together, maybe, just maybe, and this is only a deduction from fact, I know this happened, but maybe, just maybe, some people won't wake up. You see, everyone woke up after 5 hours, but this was just one stick in the ground, just practicing. When the timing is right, I know the sticks will be hitting the ground. I don't know what's going to happen next. I'm just deducing from what I know and what I've been told. It may well be. It's not going to be a major thing. It's just that the people who need to keep living on this earth, and some have stuffed it. They've made their mistake. They had this year to make a decision where they stood, and they made the wrong decision. They just lay on the ground gracefully, and they don't get up. That's it. They don't wake up anymore. Whereas the ones who should wake up again will. And then you have a situation where there's been a cleansing, where it hasn't been chaotic like every other time. It's just been graceful and quiet. People went to sleep carefully and never woke up again. Now, that's me deducing from what I've got between the lines, and I could be wrong, but I do know one thing. I do know the stick went in the ground, and it made people go to sleep. And if it can make them go to sleep for 5 hours, maybe if all the sticks went in the ground, some wouldn't wake up again. That's the best I can give you, and it's all I want to give you. But that's my take of what could happen somewhere down the line. But it won't be 2016, ladies and gentlemen. This is supposed to be the year of decision, not of conclusion, just of decision. And then after that,
so now we decide. Now
Yeah.
we're deciding whether we live cooperatively without war, etc. And
Yeah. And look, are you going to share? Are you going to keep keeping things to yourself and never sharing? If you've got compassion left, is it all gone? More importantly, have you got any love left? If you've got none left, what use are you to the aliens? They're trying to learn off us. Where's the point having all these angry, cranky people? We can't teach them anything about those conditions. They want to learn from us, you know. I think everyone has missed something here. They might have the fantastic spaceships. Why do they keep coming here? We got something they don't have. Well, I think it's time we give it to them. And I think the problem at the moment is the people in control have got no love. And this is the problem. They've got no love for anyone but themselves. They haven't got love for the group. They've got no love for humanity anymore. They're only in it for themselves anymore. We don't need them anymore, and they're in control. How can we get rid of them? The people who have that love. Well, we don't have that sort of deal. We don't want to go and fight them and hurt them. Well, maybe someone's going to do it in a much more graceful way. It's a guesswork there, and I'm not making any promises. But I do know there are sticks, I do know there are rocks, and I do know they've got a power. And that's a scientific fact. So,
and what they're actually doing is increasing the frequency, like almost like the image I get is like placing acupuncture pins into Mother Earth.
That's a nice one. I like that. And if we put them in the right ley lines, you see, all the silkons come from one ley line. Okay, so one day soon we've got to put them back in that ley line. Now imagine if we put all those silkons back in the right time, then we had some elders that knew the songs that went with those silkons, and they put them back in the earth. And then I've got another mob putting some silkons in an island called Carter, which is called Gateway to Heaven. That's where they're going to be stored. What if those rocks were placed there? And I've had another elder singing those ones up, and you keep putting them in the right spots, the portals start opening everywhere. And the people who can't understand this sort of lifestyle, they won't be able to live in it, will they? They won't get it. Therefore, they need to stop incarnating for a while and get over the problems they've created before they come back.
In the channelings that I've been doing recently, they've spoken very much about a great separation. And it was a little bit disturbing for me to hear about a separation, so to speak, because, you know, we're all talking about, you know, the oneness. And from what I've experienced, and also just from my own experiences personally, when we increase our frequency and really vibrate with more compassion and more understanding, I believe that we become more able to see the differences, or more able to discern the different energy patterns, literally. And I found that the higher frequencies actually show us what's going on. Like, that's why I think people are literally learning more and understanding more. Like people are now looking at the sky and saying, oh, there's a chemtrail, you know, like 20 years later, right? And, yeah.
They don't even deny it anymore now. They don't even try and deny it. We all know they're doing it.
Exactly.
But see, their days are numbered. We shouldn't get too worried about that, because I've got to tell you, the earth can clean itself up very quickly. And this is their last, as the elders tell me, the old way, they're just hanging on by the skin of their teeth, and they're grabbing. And the problem is that their power base, because they did have a power base within all the different alien groups, is completely gone. That's changed. From outside, it's fixed up. They've got no power base. They're left on their own here, desperately hanging on to the old way of doing things. And honestly, it's just about done in. It really is. And the elders, what they're trying to do.
Let me ask you, that's a very big comment too, that the power base for the so-called service to self aliens, you're saying, has gone, and that they're stuck here. Those service to self malevolent races who I believe actually do feed off the fear and the negative, so-called negative energy. You're saying that their power base is gone? That information is what you've experienced or heard from the elders?
I've had people who've told me this. I've had people who've told me, elders and others who've told me, and interestingly enough, I've had some American people who've told me exactly the same thing the elders did, that there's been conflict, because look, this group, it's made of all sorts, the Greys are involved in it, and all different sorts of alien groups backing this group. They've lost their power base. There's been conflict, and they've lost. And I've got to make a point. One American person told me something interesting about one of those conflicts, that the reason that they lost is because some of the reptilians turned and joined the enlightened group. So don't discriminate and think that all mobs are bad or good. This is a bad thing to do, because there's going to be variations in each group. Even in the Pleiadians, don't think that they're all gods. They're close, and most of them are, but they're not there. And there's still things to be done. Otherwise, if they weren't, they wouldn't have incarnated again. We all come here to learn lessons. But yeah, definitely, their power base outside is gone, and they know that. What they're trying to do is desperately hang on. But you're finding all the time now that all the lies are coming unstuck. People are giving it up constantly. We're finding out all this stuff, and people are starting to give up. Like in Australia now, Australia has the lowest confidence in politicians in any country in the world in the last survey. We've given up on the whole system. I see that as being incredibly positive, a step forward. So I think there is a sense now of people starting to realise that the system's no good. Yeah.
All the old symptoms and systems, yes, they're all beginning to expose for what they truly are, so that we can create something that is certainly more about collaboration. So I think it's fascinating that with all of this information comes up, all of the information that you're dealing with, like the true origins of mankind. And when I was growing up, I remember that so many of the stories, so much of the information was very hidden and very secret. And so I'm delighted to hear that the elders are coming forward and speaking more. And we're hearing things like, I heard you mention very briefly in one of your lectures about a crystal skull from Australia. And if you have a moment, if you could just tell us a little bit about that. And of course, I must ask you about the standing stones as well.
Oh, of course. Yeah, we'll do that. Well, okay, let's do the crystal skull first, because honestly, ladies and gentlemen, I didn't want to go near that with a 40-foot pole, because it's got so much baggage attached to it. It's a bit like the alien story we wouldn't touch. But we met these people. And I'm going to tell you something. I'm lucky, and you will never be able to see it, but I sat in this lady's house and I watched the video of her discovering it. This is very important. And I watched what took place, and I thought, oh, shit, I've got no choice. I've got to back this woman, because I actually watched what happened. Now, this is a story. There were two people in Gympie that were both having telepathic communication with this skull. And I've seen it, okay? And it was communicating with both of them. Anyway, one of the ladies, the day before, they were all decided, and they bought film. They didn't know where it was. They knew it was somewhere on the Gympie Pyramid. They just knew it was there, but they didn't know what they were looking for. One of the women was called away the day before and had to fly to America, so obviously she wasn't meant to be part of it. Anyway, they went there. Now, it's fascinating, because it is a crystal skull, and I've got the video watching, and it's bouncing up as they go up the hill there, and then she stops at this spot, and she says, over there, I think there's something there. And they all stop. They're looking around. There's nothing there. And I'm looking there saying there's nothing there. And she says, he's talking to me. He's here. And everyone's looking everywhere. I can see the camera flying all over the place. It wasn't set up. It was done proper. And then finally she picks up this great big big wad of red clay. And she said, he's in there. And I thought, what the hell are you talking about? Well, I would have walked past. It was just a boulder. Anyway, because it had rained before, it was clay. Now, the clay shouldn't have come there. We found out later it came from the middle, from the Olgas. An original woman took it from the Olgas, carried it, walked all the way across and put it there. We didn't know at the time. Anyway, there she is pulling it apart, saying, it's in here, it's in here. And finally, he pulls it apart, and there it is. Now, what had happened is they either had to go there a couple of days before and set the whole damn thing up and then do that and put the whole thing up as a fake. But here's the trip. These people have taken this skull all around the countryside, the sacred sites, and flown there with their own money. They're not that rich. They've never put it on display, and they've made a cent from it. I'm starting to think, well, what are you getting out of this if it's fake? The interesting part is, when you count it, it's not like any other crystal skulls you're going to see. Because firstly, it's not an adult, it's a child. And I picked that up straight away. There were 24 teeth, not 28. It's a child. It's supposed to be for the children. Secondly, when you look at the back of it, it's got all the brain sutures, all the different cracked marks that you get in the brain. And what was really interesting was, up until quite recently, all of the sutures and the eyes were covered up in blue tack and stuffing. Why? Because the skull was sending this woman crazy. It just wouldn't stop talking to her. And she did that to save her life, basically. Now, I'm watching all this thinking, this isn't bunged on, this is fair income. And the story is, and I'll get to the end of the story now very simply, that particular skull is supposed to look after the indigo children that are coming through now. The lady's still got it today. I know where it is. I know it quite personally. We're in contact all the time. I'm going to back it because I met the 4 people there, and there's one thing that happened on one occasion that made me believe it's fair income. When we met them the first time, Evan got up and went to take a picture of the skull. Now, we'd agreed with that, but the 2 people who were protecting it didn't know. One of the guys jumped up with his fist clenched. He was going to punch Evan out for taking a picture of it. And she said, no, we've agreed to that. And he said, no, you can't put the picture up. Finally, they did agree for us to put it up. But it was fascinating to watch the reaction of the 2 men that were protecting her when there was a chance a picture might have been taken, shown somewhere. I thought to myself, if these guys are fakes, what are they getting out of this? And human nature says nothing. So it's legit. And its job is to look after the indigo children. So yes, we've got one of those. I never thought we'd have a skull. I've seen it. I know what it looks like. And it's better than any other skull on the planet. And it's got 24 teeth. And it's so powerful. But the good news is that she's taken all the stuffing off the skull now. It's now completely clean. And the skull is much happier now. And she's able to cope with it. I think they've come to some sort of cooperative communal arrangement on sleeping because it was getting ridiculous. So yeah, yes, we've got one of those.
And sorry, where was it found?
It was found up in Queensland.
Queensland. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, it's found up in Queensland, all over the place.
So the standing stones, just to bring us to the end, that Australia has its own, they call it its own Stonehenge.
Yeah, well, yes, that's what
sure
the professor called it. Yeah, look, what happened was this was found in 1939, and a guy called Frederick Slater, who was the Australian president of the Archaeological Society. So we're not talking about some mug. He'd been paid by state and federal governments to work on all the original stuff. He's considered the Australian expert on Aboriginal language and an expert on Egyptology. That's why he was chosen as the president. So I've got his notes. We found the notes he'd written. They're the only notes you'll find on Frederick Slater because they destroyed everything he did. In every university, there's no record of what he did. We got his personal notes written to the guy that was working on site. And in it, we've got the full story of the Standing Stone site. And luckily, before the site was destroyed, they mapped every one of the 184 stones, and we've got their names. We know what they're called, and we know what the names mean. Now, the interesting part is, they call it Australia's Stonehenge, but I'm sorry, it's an insult. Stonehenge is a wonderful piece of work, but it doesn't come close to this. This particular piece of work is so much different. What I thought I might do in the time I've got left, can I read from one of Slater's notes he wrote to his assistant in 1939 about what he said about this site. Okay? I got my reading glasses on too, so I can actually read it. The mound is one of the oldest, should I say the oldest forms of temple in the world and dates back to the Paleolithic age with the advent of first man. He claims the mound there is at least, according to him, 40,000 years old. Now, I'm going to read to you what he told his assistant as he went onto the site the first time. He gave us some instructions, and I think this gives you an idea of how important it is. He said, just place yourself in the position of Petrie or Carter, exploring an Egyptian tomb. Your work is of more importance, for it relates to the existence of the first men on earth, their history and their philosophy. They believed in an invisible God and the immortality of the soul. They set up no graven image, but within this temple you will find the 7 elements which are the basis of all knowledge, all science, all history, and all forms of writing. That's the stone that we're dealing with. That's the mound we're dealing with. He claims, and this is the expert here, that this is where language begins. And this is where humanity begins. And the best part of the story is when you read the story and the interpretation of the mound, because we have the full interpretation, do you know what phrase is repeated more than any other? Came to earth. I find that fascinating. By the way, this is why all his work got smashed. Okay, he talks about men and women learning the sacred means of propagating life. That is what he wrote in 1939. You got to remember, 1939, to talk about UFOs wasn't even in then. This is before this happened. He had stumbled upon the Pleiadian testimonial that was placed between those walls there. I can tell you that it begins with "Welcome to the Pillars of Heaven." This is how this mound starts. Now, it's a mound made of two major mounds and then 10 acres of at least 150 different arrangements of rocks into emus and all sorts of things. It is probably, I know that people from all over Australia, from Broome, from Cape York, would come down there and do their dances on that mound. It's the only place in Australia where you could do your dances from your country on another country, because this mound belonged to the whole of Australia. You see, Calion and the glyphs is where they landed, but this is where they put their testimonial. There's two. There's one at the glyphs. There's the Carillon glyphs where they put their story there, which is a much more a plainer, and it's all written on rock, and it's a bit more pragmatic. This one is the spiritual story. And in that, as I said, came to earth. And it will talk about man came to earth with his 7 senses fully developed. It talks about the soul is the river of life. This is the first language, ladies and gentlemen. If you read the books, they tell us the first language is about grunting, it's about animals, it's about spears and caves. No. It's about the existence of the soul and our purpose in life. And I say to people, we're in the gutter compared to where we were then. Because this is what we're supposed to do. And this, what I'm talking about here, and that particular mound, that's what they're looking for us to do upstairs. Here's another one here. This is just one. I've just got one quote here. This is one of the quotes I've got here. God came in with light from darkness and gave man a soul, and the sons of man brought him with light became the pillars of heaven. Now this is the sort of stuff that Slater's writing through his books here, because he was interpreting what was on those mounds. Now these mounds are not just, I mean, Slater called them Australia's Stonehenge, but no, Stonehenge wasn't doing this sort of stuff. And it's the beginning of language. And what's fascinating here is that I'll share with you, I can't give you the words, but I can tell you what the 10 base words for language come from. See, what he said was there were 10 base words, and I've got them in front of me right now. I've got his writing here in front of me. And from that, they added suffixes and prefixes. Now, Slater was up to 28,000 words, so this is a massive build on the suffixes and prefixes. Now, what's interesting is those first words. I'll give you the meaning of each one of them, and it'll give you an idea what this language is about. Okay, the first word means the first or beginning. Then it reads like this: air, breath, wind. Clouds across the sky. A blaze from a fire. A pillar of strength, something that nourishes. That which comes from the river of life. Fertility. Light from the sky to guide the truth, and the tree to life. Those are the 10 first words. Now this is not what we thought language began as. It is so spiritual and esoteric. So that's what this place is about. And luckily, Slater had managed to interpret this because it got the manual that was given to a lady in the 1840s who we know about, and won the Trust of the Earls, and they told him how to interpret the first language. Slater got that manual and then applied it to the site we call the Standing Stone site. So yes, I think it's the most important site on the planet, because according to Slater, it's the first temple, and it's where knowledge begins. That's not a bad start. And the best part of the story, ladies and gentlemen, yes, the whole site was bulldozed in 1940, and I met the man who bulldozed it. I worked with him before he passed on, and he wanted this fixed up. You see, they didn't want to bulldoze it. They were working with Slater and helping. But the government came a-calling and told them they were going to confiscate their land because of the Standing Stone site. So his father, at the time, told this man, he's now passed on, go and just plough the whole thing, and it'll keep the government off our back. And they never came back after that. So everyone thought it was a shame. And I said, no, it's not, because the rocks are still in the ground. And the best part is when you get an infrared drone on the top, we can find the positions again and put them back. And the best part of the story is one of the elders, before he passed on, gave us the songs for that mound, so we can sing it back to life. So I think there is a difference between Stonehenge. It's not as good as this.
And the language, the 10 words that you just gave us, it really feels to me like what Michael Cremo was talking about, and so many of the spiritual traditions, that we are, in fact, this very highly evolved, very high frequency spirit that comes down into this manifesting energy on Earth, and Cremo calls it the devolution, so to speak, rather than that we're evolved. So is there... Right. And it's so interesting, too, that in those words there was also no deity or no God mentioned.
Oh, there's no God. There is a God everywhere. Yeah. Look, the original people see the God in a blade of grass, and they see it in the tree, and they see it in the sky.
It's everywhere.
Why would you put it in this building? It is everywhere. That's the whole point of what this says. This story, I've read all the stuff, all the different interpretations. It is all about the existence of creation being everywhere. It's not no one specific spot. It's all over the place. The blaze from the fire, the light from the sky, the guide to truth, the tree of life. All those things are part of God. Everything is. They understand that. And those words are part of that.
The actual words, which you said you can't say, those words are the words that are in the original language.
Yes, they are. And they're meant to be said on the mound. You see, that's the problem. I wouldn't say those words aloud. And I would never show people. I've shown people, I've blanked out the words whenever I've shown part of his work there, because I can't let that be said aloud, because it was meant to be said on the mount. This is a sacred place, and if we're lucky enough to have the original words with the spelling in front of us, which I have right now, we have to guard that. That can't be just, I can't publish that. That would be wrong on every occasion. I'd probably be speared and put to death for doing it anyway. I'd probably do it myself first before anyone's got to me. No, those things that I can give you, it's a tough one. Don't worry. I've nearly killed myself on country before. But the trick with this is very simply, those things I gave you are also numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You see, Slater was right about this. Language came out of numeration, which came out of here. So they're the same thing. You see, with this, language and numbers are all interrelated. It's a different sort of setup. As I said, 28,000 words from the first language. We were told the first language had 100 words. They just don't get it.
Yeah. So let me ask you my last question, which is related to what you just said. We think of ourselves as 5 senses, and you said 7, and I've also received this information through channeling. Do you have any understanding from your work with the elders of what the other 2 senses are?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, because I've
Can you share that?
Look, the best way, I'll give you one. Look, the best way to do this, let's close with this. Let me tell you a story I've told quite a few times. It was with Graham Hancock. I'm sure you were aware of who he is. Graham spent about 5 days with us in country. Yeah. And then I said, you could come on country under one condition. The last day you had to sit with the elders and work out where this all meant. And he did. He went down and sat with Kana. Okay? Now, we sat around the campfire that night. And this is getting to what the senses are. And this is to tell you exactly what it could be. Kano appeared from nowhere. I was making lunch at the time. He was all done up old way. All the ochre across him, loincloth, that's all he had. And he was singing in language. Then he did that amazing whispering song that just brings everyone to tears. But anyway, we can't talk about that. But at the end of it, he spoke in language and then sometimes spoke in English and told us what he meant. And then he stepped back 1 step, and Graham was watching. We all were. There's about 15 people sitting around the campfire. Then he stepped back the 2nd step, and he's gone. He completely disappeared. And about half a second later, or maybe a second later, there he was standing behind his wife, Christine, about 30 metres away, and all around us, we are sitting on blue metal gravel. And when you walk on it, you can hear everyone working. We saw him disappear. No one heard a word, and there he was with a huge smile on his face later, standing there looking at all of us, and we're all standing with our mouths open. No one said a word for a while, and then someone later went up to Christine and asked him and said, "My God, what happened then?" And Christine said to him, "Don't ask me. I've never seen him do that before." Now that is one of those senses we're talking about. He just disappeared. And someone said to him later, and someone went up and said, "How did you do that?" And he said, "I belong to both ways. I belong to both ways, your way and our way." Well, what we're talking about there, whether it's disappearing in front of someone or telepathy, or all those things, they're one sense. We split them into different things. They don't. The original people, I've seen original people do so many things today. Kano rang me up once and said, what the hell were you doing today on country? I said, how did you know I was on country? It was 3,000 k's away. He said, not only that, you didn't smoke yourself this time, did you? I said, well, how would you know that? I said, he said, I've got a wallaby, a kangaroo in front of me telling me you didn't smoke yourself today. And I didn't. Now, how did you know that? Because he was talking to an animal. That's the same sense. And I could keep telling you stories about elders who've done things like this today. Not these things happen to us. We've seen. That's why we know this is true. Those are the things that we're supposed to be doing. You see, what he did when he disappeared was spoke to an animal. And there's other ones too. And there's other elders who've done this too. That is a capacity that every human being on the planet has. And what they're doing is they're taking it away from us. And our days are coming back. That's what this is all about. Yeah. I'd much prefer to know it had disappeared than get a brand new flat screen TV. There's nothing on TV anymore. There's just nothing on there.
Well, unless I'm watching you on YouTube, right? Yeah.
Oh, Jesus, don't do that. I've never watched myself. It'll be the last thing I go and look at. No, but look, honestly, look, this is the way. This is the way we should be looking. There is a future, and that's a much better future, man. I mean, walking, levitating in the air, talking to the animals, disappearing, and there's other stuff I've seen too. God, I mean, it doesn't finish. These old fellas, the ones who can do this, they can do stuff that it breaks all the laws of science because the laws of science don't fit anymore.
Well,
That's
I think also what really stands out too is the original people, from my memory and working in Australia, is the sense of time is completely different too. So to me, these other two senses definitely have a lot to do with location and time, and our ability to transcend those as well. And that's something that the Pleiadians have shared with me, is that we're now in this time period, we're able to extend our sense realm, our sense spectrum beyond time and space, and that actually liberates us out of this this restricted area that we're in at the moment, which allows the war and greed, etc. I was literally shivering while you were saying those 10 words, and tears were forming in my eyes. So I think even though we don't hear the words, Stephen, we absolutely get the energy of those 10 base words of our language, which are very, very powerful. So
maybe one day they will be spoken all out, eh? Maybe one day there'll be a time when we're allowed to say that properly. And
yes. And until then, we'll take your translation.
Yeah, that's as close as we'll get for now.
So I know that you haven't got your test results yet from the horse-like figure. So hopefully that'll be shared through your email.
Yeah, we'll be. I'll actually, what I'll do is I'll make sure we put it up. We're getting that tomorrow. We've got a scientist in Australia who's prepared to bite the bullet, and we're going to drill tomorrow. Yeah, the horse will be
very
amazing.
Exciting.
I've got a strong suspicion that there's a technology there, and I won't say more than this, that was only around 30 years ago. And we think we've found it in a horse that is at least 2,000 years old, and that's going to cause some major problems because this time it's still there. Anyway, we'll see how that goes.
Wonderful. So folks can find you at forgottenorigin.com, and I understand you will be perhaps doing some tours around the world soon?
Oh, there's talk of a few things going on. I know it looks like we're doing something in the Philippines next year, and there's talk of a few other things. We'll see how it goes. That's I don't plan ahead, and we don't have a manager. We just see how things. People contact us, and if it turns out right, we go and do a talk, and if it doesn't, we don't. But we're doing a few around Australia, Victoria, and a big one in South Australia, Adelaide. The end of this month, a huge one about something really big there, and then we're going to be putting up a lot about that. Yeah, there's a few things going on. We'll see how it all goes.
Well, we hope to bring you over to America too. So thank you so much for all of your work, and give all of our love also to Evan. We're sorry we didn't speak to him today.
No, he's still in probably transit trying to get back here. He'll probably get here. He'll get here as I hang up the phone, I can assure you. He must come a long way. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and then we will be, of course, maybe if you could close by repeating what the elders have said to you, that I think would be wonderful.
About which particular thing, because they've said a lot of things.
About how they always close talking to you.
Oh, well, I can tell you. Oh, yeah, very simple. We'll do what Uncle Jerry said. Just remember what Uncle Jerry said. Whenever we close up, he told me, and he told everyone, our ancestry is Pleiadian. And that's what he said, and he knew what he was talking about. Good luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.